Sodiq Yusuff and Edson Barboza, two guys that are on different ends of the experience coin in the UFC, but they're also guys that could have, maybe different momentum under their belt. You've got Sodiq Yusuff, he's only riding the strength of a 2-fight win streak, but he's got just one loss inside this featherweight division in the UFC. So very impressive results. That loss, of course, was to Arnold Allen, a ranked featherweight who was just on the precipice of earning a title shot before losing that decision to Max Holloway. So we see that Arnold Allen has produced a ton of great results in the UFC. It's no skin off Sodiq Yusuff's nose that he lost that fight. However, he's had some other close encounters in the UFC. Not every win has been super clean and decisive, but he's the much younger fighter in this matchup. He's only 30 years of age. He's going to be standing 5'9", 71-inch reach for Sodiq Yusuff, and he's taking on the former lightweight, the very experienced UFC savvy veteran in Edson Jr. Barboza, a guy who's not a stranger to UFC main events and who's not a stranger to this featherweight division. Now, he's had several fights in this division, and he's looked pretty competent overall. I do think that his cardio has been a question mark in this featherweight division in ways that it wasn't always at lightweight. We saw him go 5 hard fives with Kevin Lee at 155 pounds, but I do think at 145 pounds, whether it was due to damage or whether it was due to fatigue, I think he was starting to slow down evidently against a guy like Giga Chikadze at 145 pounds in a previous main event showing. So this is a fight where both guys have, some things that are checking off boxes in my head, things that I like about them and things that make me a little bit concerned. If you had to point to one thing to say, Liam, why would you not be super bullish on Sodiq Yusuff? Or if you had to pick one thing about Sodiq Yusuff that makes you nervous about how he would fare against the top guys in the division, I think most people would say it's his chin. I think his skills are there. He's got good striking. He hasn't really been out wrestled cleanly by many opponents. He seems to have good and opportunistic grappling. Most people were surprised when he wrapped up that neck of Don Shainis, who tried to pursue the wrestling and the grappling as his path to victory in that fight. And unfortunately, Sodiq Yusuff just had too much for him. So when you look at a guy like Sodiq, he seems to be a guy from the Lloyd Irvin camp who's been rounding out his skills on the mat for quite some time. He seems to have been putting together, good striking skills on the feet where he can land, in that Arnold Allen fight. Allen would land these significant shots towards the end of the round. Arnold Allen's a really tactical guy, so he'd find these ways to sneak off like one really big strike, change the complexion of the round. But overall, Sodiq Yusuff was winning the minutes of that fight, broadly speaking, against a very high-level guy. So I think that Sodiq Yusuff, if he is not let down by his chin, he will be a very high-level fighter. He'll be a very difficult guy for a lot of people to contend with. I think he's got a lot of physicality as well for this 145-pound division. However, Edson Barboza, he's going to have some of those intangibles here in terms of the height and the reach, the anthropomorphic advantages. He's the taller fighter by 2 inches here at 5'11". He's going to have the 4-inch reach advantage with a 75-inch reach. And we know that Edson can be dynamic with his kicks to multiple targets. He can kick the body very effectively. He can kick the head and be extremely dangerous. And he can also go to the leg and, create a lot of havoc for his opponents. So Edson's got a well-rounded game. He can also box at a high level. He's crisp with his striking. I think the one concern that you would point to for Edson on the other side is that he can be a little bit questionable with his chin. You look at the guy, he's been around for a long time. He's fought a lot of great fighters, but he is 13-4 career to the knockout. He has been clipped on the chin several times in the UFC. Giga Chikadze stopped him more so to an accumulation of strikes. Justin Gaethje was able to put him away with a right hook in the very first round. Again, another prolific knockout artist, but maybe not a guy who's known for putting people away so early in the fight. You look at the rear naked choke loss against Donald Cerrone in round 1. That was Donald Cerrone club and sub, my guy. It was a jab that put him all the way on ice skates, and quickly you saw Donald Cerrone grab a hold of that choke and close the show. Shout out to the chat, guys. I got to quickly say, our guy Contender View says, hey, bro, killed it on Contenders. Great job. I appreciate you for that. Our guy Dixon says, hi, Liam. Appreciate you guys. A lot of the regulars in the building. Appreciate everybody who's arrived. Appreciate everybody who's dropped a like so far, and I hope that you guys continue to do that. Elijah's in the building. Shout out to our guy Adam, says good evening. Our guy Mario, yes, Liam, let's go. Absolutely. And Grateful Dude says appreciating these breakdowns. Grateful for you being here. And we still got plenty of breakdowns. So we'll get right back to it here. But the bottom line is Edson Barboza is a guy that he shows a bunch of submission losses on his record as well. In the UFC, you see a couple of submission losses, I should say, just two, but they're both club and subs, right? He was a bloody mess when Tony Ferguson was able to snatch up that Darce choke and get the finish in that fight. And I think that one thing about Edson that we've seen over time, he does not respond very well to pressure. His last fight, he did a good job of, getting to the pressure of Billy Quarantillo before it had started, right? Like Billy Quarantillo is a guy that normally wants to bear down on you. And by that second and the third round, he really starts to come into his own. But in round one, he got caught cold there. He just didn't really have that opportunity to start laying into Edson with the pressure. We saw Beneil Dariush, perfect game plan against a guy like Barboza, backed him up the whole time. But then Barboza found an opportunity, jump knee, closed the show, right? He's an explosive finisher. He's dynamic. Even in a fight where he's getting pressured, he'll find opportunities. Against Kevin Lee, he hit that spinning kick and made Kevin do the chicken dance. No doubt about that. So he has the power to create these dynamic moments and opportunities. But I just think to myself, if he does get pressured, we've seen how he reacts. It's normally not a good reaction. And that's something that at 37 years of age, it's going to be very hard to train that out of your system, so to speak. So want to shout out to our guy, Lenny Manet, Maine. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it, but he says your knowledge is golden with the $5 dono. Appreciate you for dropping the dono, my man. It's always a pleasure to come over here and try to break down these fights for you guys. And this is my first look at this card. So I'm looking at two guys that, I like both these guys. I think they're both fun fighters. I think they both have an interesting style, but Sodiq Yusuff's taken some time off. He's probably been in the gym working on his skills, getting a lot better at the game. And I do think that Edson, a lot of his camp and a lot of his focus, I would have to think, is on the weight management. I think at this point at 145 pounds, I think it's going to take serious, lifestyle commitments from a guy like Edson to really make this weight class consistently. And at his age, the UFC certainly likes the guy. They like putting him in prime positions. They know he's willing to go out there, kill or be killed style, put on fun fights, fun scraps, get finishes, and he'll put it on the line against anybody. So the company has got to love this guy. But I also think of a guy like Sodiq Yusuff as somebody that they're looking to build up and position as a guy with a future in the division. And I don't know that they see Edson that way. I think that, he's a tweener. He's a guy that can come back and forth between different weight classes, make fun fights with guys, put on dynamic striking matches. But I do think that some of the strengths from Sodiq Yusuff on the mat include those front headlock series, include that guillotine series, that Darce choke. And those are things that have troubled Edson in the past. I don't think he likes the sensation of being choked. I think he's somebody that, that's a way that you can make him really uncomfortable. He will make people uncomfortable with the striking. And I think it'd be a mistake for Sodiq Yusuff to just hang out with this guy at range. I think he's going to try and clinch him up, force him into some exchanges where he's not comfortable, limit the engagements when they're at distance, try and pick his spots. And I think that that's critical to winning a fight like this. I think that if he's reckless and gets too engaging in the pocket, I think his chin could let him down here. So for me, this is a volatile fight. I do think that this is a main event that I would project to go under. More often than not, I think both of these guys have clear paths to finish. And I think that they both have clear paths to be finished as well. So perhaps that leads to a little bit of hesitation from these guys on the feet. But I just think eventually, if you got 25 minutes to work, I think eventually a bill will come due for one of these guys. And I don't know that I trust Edson's cardio at 145 pounds to go the full 25 minutes. And I think that on the other side, conversely, I'm not sure that I trust Sodiq Yusuff's chin to last 25 minutes if it's all on the feet with a guy like Edson who can make you pay. So, it just seems to me like a fight where it's going to end violently, but I do probably lean towards the guy who's a little bit younger here, who's a little bit fresher in the spot. Edson Barboza has been through a lot of fights, a lot of tough wars, and I don't think that we've seen Sodiq necessarily beat guys on this level of this ilk. but I do think that we're starting to see some chin regression from a guy like Edson Barboza. Bryce Mitchell, not known for his power nor his striking, went out there and dropped him in the very first round. Billy Quarantillo got flatlined in the first round, so he didn't get a chance to show off much of his game. Giga Chikadze, I thought did a good job in that fight of beating up Edson, picking his spots. And Edson's a primary striker, right? He went down, he had a primary striking matchup. It didn't go his way. This is supposed to be at his optimal weight class. This is against a guy who hasn't had as much MMA experience and who doesn't have the same ability to switch up his game and work in the grappling. So I think that Sodiq does have some power on the feet that he could try and leverage here. But I also think that his ground game is probably superior to Edson. So really interesting one for me. I'm definitely leaning towards the under. Let's take a look. I haven't looked at the prices at all for this one. Let me see if I can find a quick. You know what? I'll bring up OddsJam just so I don't bias myself too much here. See if I can get a total and a money line without getting too invested in the props here. So it looks like I can only get the money line here. Everything's getting paywalled these days, folks. Bear with me. Sorry about that. I'm clicking over to best fight odds. For anybody who's wondering, that's where I'm going to source these odds from. So it's looking like minus 165 or so is the market consensus number on a Sodiq Yusuff. I don't know that I necessarily see a tremendous amount of value there, but I do think that it's probably a close to accurate line just off of a gut feeling. Let's poke over and see if I can find a total. So it looks like the total here is sitting at the under 3.5 rounds of around minus 150, minus 138 or so. I wish it was a 4.5 personally. So I'm going to wait and see. I'm going to wait and see what happens here. I think that this is interesting as well because you're looking at a contender series guy being given that main event showcase in a guy like Edson Barboza. He's a UFC lifer, no doubt about it, but he's almost representing a different generation. And I think that the UFC is kind of trying to market these contender series guys as the future. So, yeah, I think that this is going to be a Sodiq Yusuff win. But I will do my due diligence as I always do. Cheers to everybody who's rocking with us in the chat. We'll take a quick sip of coffee, and it's on to the co-main event here.